I think today, because I've broached on the Windsor family so many times before in my previous videos, I think I better explain more about who they are, what they represent, and where they came from. I mean, we all know that the Windsor family are descended from the basically House of Hanover, der Herzog von Braunschweig und Holstein. That's their roots in Hanover, Germany. So why did they come about? Why were they brought to this country to be the monarch? Basically, we're dealing with a situation following the golden, or the alleged golden revolution, referred to by English historians as a pivotal moment in the constitutional monarchy being established in the UK, for the first time ever, or British, I would say citizens, but there's never been any citizens in Great Britain, only subjects, where these subjects were given some very fundamental human rights. Before that, they were not considered human really. They were subject to the whims of a monarch, hence the many thousands that were put to death by these monarchs, including the Catholic monarchs before Henry VIII's rape of the Catholic Church. Anyway, we'll move away from that, but we'll continue to focus on how the Windsor family, that we now call them, came about. When Queen Anne died in 1701, the British establishment was terrified of a Catholic return to the United Kingdom, where they would re-establish the ties with the Vatican and the Catholic faith. That was the last thing they wanted, because what you must remember, after the dissolution of the monasteries, people became very rich with the former monastic and Catholic, English Catholic Church and Vatican lands in the UK. They owned vast tracts of lands and properties. They'd built the Catholic cathedrals for the worship of the Catholic Church. The establishment after the death of Queen Anne was scared that they, or terrified I should say, were terrified that they would come back with a Catholic monarch and exact their revenge upon them. They wanted to avoid that at all costs. So they got together and they decided that they were going to find a suitable monarch to replace Queen Anne, which met their criteria of being a Protestant, of being someone easily manipulated and controlled, and not too bright. So they went off to Europe. At the time of their search, there were some 56 people who could claim our accession to the English throne. But the problem was they were all Catholic, and that's the last thing that they would want. They were the Stuarts, basically. So they went shopping around Europe, travelled everywhere, until they came to Hanover in Germany, where they were brought to the court of the Herzog von Braunschweig und Holstein, and they met George, or Jürgen. And as soon as they clapped eyes on him, they said, he's the one. Basically, Jurgen, or George the First of England, as he was to become, was a congenital idiot. And they thought, just the ticket, just the job. We are going to make this person the king of our country. Even though they knew there was some 56 people who had a better claim to the English throne than King George. So they got hold of him, told him, Jurgen, we're going to make you King of England. And he, from this very minor principality on the German plains, must have felt like he'd won the lottery, because England by then was building its empire. It was probably, I would say, the second or third richest country in Europe, after Holland and maybe France. So they arranged for George, or Jurgen, or George the First, whatever way you want to describe him, to come to England and be coronated as the king. No sooner had they brought him to England, they got a grip of him, they imprisoned him in Richmond Palace, and this is the truth. He was a virtual prisoner, didn't have a word of English, wasn't intelligent enough to learn a second language, basically, where they had total control of him, which gave them power of the realm, because we were, after all, dealing with someone of very subnormal intelligence who didn't have a clue what was going on. The ordinary people of England absolutely hated George. I mean, you can read in the contemporary accounts from Daniel Defoe about what the British people thought of him and how they rejected him and how they didn't want them. So from George I, we can say that the foreign German line of the British monarchs was kept up until recently, basically. They always thought of this country as a, let us say, more viable place to live than volatile Europe, where they could be overthrown at any time or deposed. And what they were good at, the Windsors, Saxe-Coburg, Gotha, and the Dukes of Hanover, was being, let us say, uninteresting. And that was an advantage. That wasn't a disadvantage, because they bred profusely in this country, lots and lots of them everywhere, most of them on the taxpayer payroll, by the way. They breed quite a bit, actually, and they were very good at being uninteresting, boring, staid, and most important of all, obedient, because there are other people in this country who are aristocracy, can't stand them, who know what they are, and who the Windsors, etc., are absolutely terrified of. And who are they, you might ask? still about now. They're the descendants of the Norman Knights. Don't need to go into much more about that. But when you think of the Windsor family, they've done all right here. They've done their part, or played their part. They get a nice way of life. But you have to ask the question, are they the monarch or still the prisoner? Thank you.